I've got some troubling news about England's royal family.
The orchestra was still playing when Prince William suddenly raised his hand and brought the palace gala to a halt. Hundreds of guests turned toward him, confused by the interruption. But William was not looking at the musicians, the dignitaries, or even his father. His eyes were fixed on Queen Camilla's left hand, where a ring connected to Diana's most private memories was shining beneath the chandeliers, and the prince knew it had never been meant for her. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. William remained standing as the final note faded across Buckingham Palace's Grand Ballroom. The Grand Ballroom is the palace's main ceremonial hall, where every gesture carries meaning. Charles sat only feet away. Catherine watched her husband. Princess Anne turned toward Camilla before anyone else understood why the future king had stopped everything. The ring was not Catherine's sapphire engagement ring. It was a lesser-known jewel Diana had kept after a painful period in her marriage, preserved apart from the pieces later shared with her sons. William had seen it described in a sealed family inventory, a private record listing possessions, their history, and any restrictions placed upon them. That restriction had never been formally withdrawn. The ring was never to be reassigned for ceremonial use. William gripped his chair and spoke without raising his voice. "Remove it, please." Catherine saw pain cross his face. Anne saw the instant recognition of a boundary being broken. Camilla first smiled as though the interruption concerned protocol. Then William named Diana, and the Queen's expression hardened. Camilla lowered her hand and covered the ring with her opposite palm. Charles studied the jewel, then looked at his wife, yet offered no defense. His silence struck William like a second shock. Either the king already knew the ring had been released, or someone inside his household had made the decision without telling him. Camilla said the jewel had been cleared for ceremonial use. William immediately asked who authorized it. Near the entrance, the senior jewelry custodian dropped his eyes. A custodian protects and releases royal pieces for approved occasions. His silence turned embarrassment into suspicion. Staff guided guests into an adjoining reception room. William told Charles the gala would not resume until the ring's chain of custody was explained. Camilla removed it slowly, but did not surrender it. She placed it inside her evening bag and closed the clasp. The music had stopped, but the true confrontation had only begun, because the ring on Camilla's hand was tied to a wound that William, Charles, and the Queen had each carried very differently. To the watching guests, it was a dispute over a piece of jewelry. To William, it was the sudden return of a mother he had lost too young. To Camilla, it was a test of whether her position could survive Diana's shadow. And to Charles, standing between his wife and his son, the ring represented something even more dangerous. A private mistake from the past that had somehow found its way into the most public room in the palace. William left the ballroom before his control finally broke. Catherine followed him into a private corridor and watched him pace once before stopping beside a narrow table. He pressed both hands against its edge and lowered his head. For years, the prince had learned to carry grief without allowing it to interfere with duty. That discipline mattered, because every public reaction from the future king could shape how the monarchy itself was judged. But this was not a speech, a memorial, or an anniversary. It was his mother's private ring on the hand of the woman who had taken Diana's place beside Charles. Catherine moved closer and told him he did not have to confront Camilla alone. William looked at her, his face controlled, but his voice strained. He said this was not only about grief, it was about boundaries. Diana's private inventory, a protected record describing her possessions and the conditions attached to them, had stated that the ring was not for ceremonial reassignment. He remembered reading those words in a sealed family summary years earlier. Someone had either ignored that restriction or deliberately removed it. Charles remained inside the ballroom with Camilla after the guests were moved away. He asked why she had worn the jewel without speaking to him first. The queen opened her evening bag and wrapped her fingers around the ring, as though surrendering it would make the accusation true. She insisted that she had not stolen anything. An official had delivered it with written approval and described its use as historical continuity, a palace phrase meaning that an older royal object was being used to connect the present reign with the past. Camilla told the king she believed the palace had finally stopped treating Diana's belongings as untouchable relics. Charles asked her to place the ring on the table. She hesitated. That pause changed everything. The monarch saw fear beneath her anger, while she saw doubt forming in his eyes. Camilla understood that wearing the jewel could be viewed as tribute, but she also knew many would see possession, triumph, and a boundary crossed too far. Princess Anne entered the corridor and found William still beside Catherine. Anne warned that the ring's appearance could not be dismissed as a wardrobe mistake. During a recent collection review, she had questioned how several private jewels were being handled and had received a direct assurance that Diana's restricted pieces remained untouched. The Princess Royal, a title traditionally given to the monarch's eldest daughter, now believed someone had misled her. William straightened and made his decision. Every approval sheet, inventory record, and custody entry would be examined before Camilla left the palace. Charles agreed. But the Queen finally placed the ring on the table and warned them that opening those records might expose decisions made long before the gala. The gala scandal did not begin beneath the ballroom chandeliers. It began 11 days earlier in a locked dressing chamber during a private rehearsal attended by only 4 people. That afternoon, Princess Anne saw the engagement ring resting inside a velvet tray prepared for Camilla. She asked one direct question: "Why is Diana's ring here?" The answer she received was so carefully worded that Anne immediately knew someone was trying to move the jewel without accepting responsibility. Anne stepped closer and lifted the identification card beside the ring. The Palace Jewelry Office, a department responsible for recording, protecting, and releasing royal pieces, had gathered a private selection for upcoming ceremonial events. Camilla's dresser, a senior custodian, and a household administrator stood nearby as the princess examined the tray. None of them expected her to remove the newly printed label. Anne pulled it back and found the original warning beneath it: restricted private association, no ceremonial reassignment. That phrase meant the jewel could not be given to another royal for official use. She ordered the ring removed from Camilla's gala selection at once. The custodian stiffened, while the administrator insisted that the piece had been reclassified by a higher household office. Anne asked for the name. The custodian refused to give it. She placed the ring back into the tray and warned both officials that William must be consulted before anyone touched it again. Her anger came from more than protocol. Diana's belongings had survived decades of family tension because restrictions were supposed to protect personal memory from royal convenience. Camilla entered after Anne had gone and learned that the ring had been challenged. She told her dresser that she was tired of being treated as though every object connected to Diana remained morally forbidden. The Queen's frustration had been building for years. She had gained the title, the position, and the formal place beside Charles. Yet she still felt every decision was measured against a woman whose memory could silence an entire room. The warning disappeared almost immediately. The rehearsal report sent to Charles made no mention of Anne's objection. A separate briefing prepared for William described the jewel only as historic private jewelry, approved for gala display. A briefing is a short official summary used to prepare senior royals for an event, and this one concealed both Diana's connection and the restriction. Charles initialed the final ceremonial sheet, but the original warning page was missing from the packet he reviewed. His signature created the appearance of full approval, even though the king had never seen the most important line. Someone had not simply made a mistake. Someone had shaped the information so consent would be easier to obtain. Anne refused to remain silent. On the morning of the gala, she sent William a handwritten note through a trusted aide. It contained only 5 words: "Watch the Queen's left hand." He read it minutes before entering the ballroom, but did not understand the warning until Camilla raised her hand beneath the lights. William later placed the rehearsal card beside the gala authorization sheet and saw the deception clearly. The wording had been changed. The restriction had been buried. His father's signature had been used as protection. The discovery transformed William's grief into determination, and when Camilla entered the private drawing room still carrying the ring, restraint finally gave way to confrontation. Before anyone could decide who deserved blame, they first had to uncover how a ring sealed away for decades had been placed in Camilla's hands that evening. The drawing room doors closed, leaving William, Camilla, Charles, Catherine, and Anne without guests, music, or ceremony to protect them. The ring sat inside Camilla's open bag, only inches from her hand. William stepped forward and asked her to place it on the table. She refused. Then he repeated the request, no longer as a grieving son seeking courtesy, but as the future king demanding the return of an object the palace had no right to redefine. Charles ordered the doors locked and dismissed every aide from the corridor. A drawing room is a smaller private reception room used for confidential conversations away from public ceremony. The king understood that one overheard sentence could turn a family wound into a palace crisis. Camilla stood beside the table, while William faced her across the narrow space. Catherine remained near him. Anne watched the queen's hand. Camilla tightened her grip on the bag and said she had worn the ring under formal authorization. She insisted that palace procedure had cleared it, and that she could not be blamed for trusting the officials responsible for the royal collection. William answered that internal approval did not erase Diana's written restriction. A ceremonial authorization is official permission to use an item at a royal event, but it cannot lawfully change the private conditions attached to that item. William stepped closer. "Put it down, Camilla." She asked whether he was accusing her of theft. The prince held her gaze and said he was accusing the palace of taking something private and making it convenient. His anger remained controlled, yet the restraint made every word heavier. Camilla struck back. She told William he had never accepted that objects linked to Diana now existed inside a monarchy forced to continue without her. The queen said he was turning an administrative dispute into a public humiliation because he could not separate memory from duty. Her voice hardened as she asked how long the family would allow the past to overrule the present. William did not look away. He said, "Duty without respect became entitlement." His voice broke only once, when he explained that the ring was one of the few pieces his mother had refused to surrender to royal symbolism. Catherine reached toward him, but he remained still. Anne saw grief return to his face, then watched him force it back under control. Charles finally placed his hand flat against the table. He told Camilla that Diana was not controlling the present. The real question was whether the family could be trusted to honor a promise after death. The king's words silenced her because they did not defend William alone. They condemned the system that had allowed the ring to reach her. Camilla opened the bag and revealed how the decision had been made. In a documented conversation before the gala, the household administrator personally told her that the restriction had been reclassified. She added that the official claimed Charles wanted old divisions removed from the collection. The room went still. Camilla removed the ring and placed it on the polished table. The faint metallic sound felt louder than the orchestra had. William refused to touch it. He asked Anne to secure it, and she closed her hand around the jewel. Charles ordered the administrator brought to the palace library immediately. Camilla warned that the official would not accept blame alone because several powerful people had supported the change. The ring was back under Anne's control, but authority now depended on discovering whose signature carried real power and whose approval had been manufactured. Inside the palace library, the truth did not arrive as a confession. It appeared in layers: an altered label, a missing restriction page, a softened briefing, and finally a signature placed beneath the royal seal. Charles studied the documents without speaking. William watched his father's face change as each page exposed how easily private grief had been converted into administrative language. But the most disturbing discovery was not that one official had acted recklessly. It was that the system had rewarded silence at every stage. Charles sat at the long table and compared the original inventory page with the revised Gala sheet. The royal seal is the official mark used to confirm that a decision carries the monarch's authority. Yet the papers before him told two different stories. One protected Diana's ring. The other made it available. He removed his glasses, folded them carefully, and asked why the sentence guarding the jewel had been excluded from his briefing. The household administrator pointed to the king's initials and said the selection had been approved. He had spent years coordinating sensitive ceremonial choices and believed the collection could not remain trapped by old emotional restrictions. In his view, modernizing royal use meant removing barriers that complicated assignments and created conflict between senior family members. Charles looked up slowly. He said consent obtained through an incomplete document was not honest approval. The administrator tried to explain that ceremonial access involved several offices: the sovereign, household staff, collection custodians, dressers, and private family conditions. That overlapping authority allowed each person to assume someone else had accepted responsibility. But the explanation only deepened the king's anger. William stepped forward and accused the official of using palace culture as protection. He said everyone involved had expected the family to remain silent because confrontation would damage appearances. The administrator had counted on Diana's name, making people uncomfortable enough to avoid asking direct questions. The prince's words were controlled, but the accusation was devastating. The system had not failed by accident. It had been designed to spread blame until no one appeared responsible. Anne's rehearsal notes and internal email summaries confirmed the pattern. At least 3 officials knew she had objected to the ring. None included her warning in the final briefing. One documented message reduced the dispute to a manageable family sensitivity, as though a dead woman's written boundary were merely an inconvenience. William then found a private note concerning Camilla. It confirmed that she had been told the ring carried a historic sensitivity, although she had never been shown the complete restriction. The discovery left her in a dangerous middle ground. She had not known everything, but she had known enough to ask more questions. Charles drew a hard line through the Gala approval and wrote "void" beside his initials. He removed the administrator from all collection duties pending a formal inquiry. A formal inquiry is an official investigation used to establish who acted, what they knew, and whether rules were broken. William immediately ordered Diana's entire inventory sealed before midnight. The administrator was escorted toward the door, then stopped. In a recorded account requested for the inquiry, he claimed Camilla had pushed for the ring even after being warned it could reopen old wounds. Charles did not respond. He gathered the note, left the library, and went to ask his wife the question he had been avoiding. The palace could suspend an official with one written order, but no decree could prevent the consequences from entering Charles and Camilla's marriage. When Camilla returned to her private rooms, the ring was gone. The gala had been shortened, and the palace corridors had become unnaturally quiet. Staff members lowered their eyes as she passed. A dresser removed the untouched gloves laid out for the remainder of the evening. For the first time since becoming queen, Camilla felt the full weight of a room refusing to follow her. Yet the deepest blow came moments later, when Charles entered alone and closed the door behind him. The palace moved quickly to contain the damage. Guests were told that the remaining reception had been cancelled because of a private family matter. That phrase is often used when the household needs to end an official event without revealing a personal dispute. Diplomats and charity patrons left through the east entrance, while staff dismantled an evening designed to display unity. The celebration had become evidence of division. Anne carried the ring away herself. She placed it inside a sealed presentation case and signed the temporary custody record, a written document showing exactly who controlled the jewel at each stage. William then issued a direct order. Nothing connected to Diana could be moved, restored, photographed, or assigned without written approval from both sons or their chosen representatives. His grief had become policy. Camilla sat alone and rubbed the pale mark left around her finger. Anger still burned beneath her humiliation, but the memory of William stopping the ballroom would not leave her. She had entered the gala believing the ring would prove she belonged inside the family's history. Now it had made her appear as though she had taken something that was never hers. Charles stood across from her and asked one question. Had she known Anne objected? Camilla admitted that an official warned her the jewel might upset William. She had dismissed it as another sign that the prince could not accept her position. The king's expression changed. He told her that concern for his son should never have been mistaken for resistance to her queenship. Camilla struck back with years of buried frustration. She said she had been expected to show endless sensitivity toward Diana while receiving little understanding herself. Charles answered that pain did not become less real simply because it was inconvenient. The words widened the distance between them. Charles noticed an official gala photograph on a nearby table. It showed Camilla wearing the ring before the evening collapsed. He turned the frame face down and said the image could not be released. The gesture wounded her more deeply than anger, because it erased the moment she had hoped would confirm her acceptance. Camilla finally revealed the request she had made in a documented conversation with her dresser. She had asked for a jewel carrying continuity and emotional importance. She denied naming Diana's ring, but admitted that once she learned its identity, she did not refuse it. That admission gave Charles the answer he feared. Catherine found William elsewhere in the palace and urged restraint. She supported protecting Diana's memory, but warned that crushing Camilla completely would deepen the fracture. The princess asked him to seek acknowledgement, not revenge. William agreed to one final conversation. No officials, no lawyers, no custodians, only Charles and his son. With the palace machinery temporarily silenced, the crisis reached the one relationship capable of changing its meaning. The bond between a king burdened by the past and a son determined not to repeat it. Near midnight, Charles found William in the darkened ballroom where the gala had collapsed hours earlier. No aides stood nearby. No papers separated them. The ring was locked away, but Diana's absence seemed to occupy every empty chair. Charles did not begin by defending Camilla or explaining palace procedure. He simply told his son, "I should have protected what she left behind." For William, those words changed the conflict from a battle over possession into something far more personal, an acknowledgement he had waited decades to hear. William remained beside the abandoned royal table. Empty musicians' chairs and a discarded program showed how suddenly the evening had ended. The prince understood that they now faced a choice. They could treat the scandal as an administrative failure and bury it inside palace procedure, or create a permanent family directive protecting Diana's restricted belongings. Charles admitted that he had avoided difficult questions about Diana's personal effects because they forced him to revisit choices he could never undo. He had allowed officials to handle the collection because distance felt easier than memory. William listened without interrupting, but his anger remained close to the surface. The king's regret mattered, yet regret alone could not restore trust. William finally described a childhood moment he had never discussed with his father. After a painful family gathering, he had watched Diana remove the engagement ring and place it inside a small box. She had said nothing dramatic. She had simply closed the lid and walked away. The jewel mattered, because his mother had chosen silence over spectacle. Its value came from that private decision, not from diamonds or royal history. Charles accepted the accusation without defending himself. He said that by allowing emotional restrictions to be treated as inconvenient, he had created the conditions for the Gala disaster. The monarch refused to blame Camilla alone, and he would not allow one dismissed administrator to carry the entire burden. The failure belonged to a system he had permitted to operate without enough honesty. The turning point came quietly. Charles proposed a permanent Diana collection covenant, a binding family agreement that would protect restricted items from display, reassignment, or ceremonial use. William would oversee the family conditions, while Anne would control physical custody and verify every release. Charles placed the unsigned directive on the table and offered his son the pen first. William did not take it. He asked whether Camilla would admit, inside the family and without excuses, that wearing the ring had been wrong. The king promised she would. William then made his own decision. He would not demand that the queen be removed from future galas. Accountability, he said, must restore boundaries, rather than create another cycle of humiliation. In that moment, he acted not only as Diana's grieving son, but as a future sovereign choosing control over revenge. Charles finally handed him the pen again. This time, William signed. By morning, the palace would need to explain why the gala had ended. But before any official statement could be released, a photograph of Camilla wearing the ring reached the public. The family had finally found a private path toward resolution, but outside the palace gates, one image was about to turn their hidden reckoning into a national spectacle. At 6:10 the next morning, Britain saw the image the palace had tried to contain. Camilla stood beneath the ballroom chandeliers, smiling toward the cameras, with Diana's untouched engagement ring clearly visible on her hand. Within minutes, broadcasters abandoned their planned schedules. Newspapers rebuilt their front pages. Crowds began gathering outside Buckingham Palace. Yet the photograph that caused the greatest reaction was not the Queen wearing the jewel. It was William in the background, staring at the ring moments before he stopped the gala. The photograph had been taken during the opening reception and distributed before palace officials could withdraw it. The communications office, the team responsible for official royal statements and media handling, confirmed that the gala had ended early because of a dispute involving a privately restricted family item. It avoided directly blaming Camilla, but stated that the ring had been returned to protected custody. One newspaper rebuilt its front page around the image. Across the top, in enormous letters, appeared the headline, "The Ring That Stopped the Palace." Editors cropped the photograph so Camilla's hand filled one side, while William's shocked expression dominated the other. The picture told a story more powerful than any statement. She appeared confident. He looked wounded. Between them sat decades of unresolved history. Crowds gathered near the Victoria Memorial by mid-morning. The monument stands directly outside Buckingham Palace, and often becomes a focal point during major royal events. People left white roses, handwritten cards, and small photographs honoring Diana. One elderly woman placed a blue ring box among the flowers and told a television reporter that the issue was not ownership, it was respect. Public opinion divided almost immediately. Some accused Camilla of deliberately wearing a symbol that could never belong to her. Others argued that palace officials had placed her in an impossible position, then allowed her to carry the full shame when their own system failed. The Queen became both the face of the controversy and the target of anger created by decisions made behind several closed doors. William watched the coverage beside Catherine at Kensington Palace. He saw the front page, studied it for several seconds, and turned it face down. The gesture mirrored Charles's decision to hide the official gala photograph hours earlier. Catherine told him the public could now see his pain, but his next choice would decide whether they also saw his judgment. Camilla rejected the first statement prepared for her. The draft called the event an administrative misunderstanding, language that protected the institution while avoiding responsibility. In a recorded discussion with the communications secretary, she insisted on adding that wearing the ring had caused pain and should not have happened. Charles approved a second statement. It confirmed new protection rules for Diana's private collection and acknowledged that the dismissed administrator had played a central role, though confidential correspondence remained sealed. The king chose limited transparency over complete silence. The statement calmed nothing inside the family. One final meeting still remained. Camilla would have to face William without officials, prepared language, or procedural excuses. The public had delivered its judgment through headlines, flowers, and fury, but the emotional verdict still belonged to William, Camilla, and the family gathered behind closed doors. The final meeting lasted only 23 minutes, but it ended a conflict that had been building for decades. Camilla entered without the ring, without an aide, and without a prepared defense. William stood beside the window, while Charles and Catherine remained silent. On the table between them rested the sealed case containing Diana's jewel. Camilla looked directly at William and admitted that wearing it had crossed a boundary no royal approval could erase. For the first time since the gala, he allowed himself to sit down. Anne remained beside the case, as the family gathered in a private palace sitting room. The Diana Collection Covenant had already been prepared. A covenant is a formal written promise, setting permanent rules that those involved agree to honor. Under its terms, Diana's restricted personal jewelry could never again be worn by another royal, loaned for ceremony, or reclassified through household procedure. William and Harry would retain authority over private family restrictions, while Anne would oversee every future release. Camilla faced William and offered no excuse. She admitted that she had known the ring carried emotional sensitivity and should have refused it the moment its identity became clear. The Queen said her desire to prove that she belonged within royal history had blinded her to an important difference. Joining that history did not give her the right to possess every part of it. William listened without interrupting. He did not pretend the wound was small, and he did not offer immediate forgiveness. The prince told her that institutions could erase a person slowly, not by destroying what they left behind, but by changing its meaning until their wishes no longer mattered. He accepted her acknowledgement because she had finally named the harm without hiding behind officials, paperwork, or royal procedure. Charles signed the covenant next. The king declared that Diana's memory would never again be treated as an obstacle to palace convenience. He also accepted responsibility for allowing incomplete briefings and emotional avoidance to shape decisions made under his authority. His silence, he admitted, had created room for others to act. Anne then carried the sealed case toward the protected family archive, a secure collection where private royal objects are preserved under strict access rules. William accompanied her inside. He opened the case one final time, looked at the ring, and remembered the mother who had once placed it quietly inside a box. Then he closed the lid himself. Anne locked the archive door. Catherine waited outside and took William's hand when he emerged. She reminded him that protecting Diana's memory did not require living forever inside the pain of losing her. The future king finally understood that preservation and release could exist together. Camilla kept her royal position, but her access to restricted family jewels was permanently narrowed. She accepted the condition without protest and withdrew from the next ceremonial jewelry selection as a visible act of accountability. The gala had not ended because of the ring's financial value. It ended because William refused to let royal authority overwrite private memory. Camilla learned that becoming queen did not grant ownership over every symbol that came before her. Charles learned that silence could become permission. William learned that defending his mother's legacy required judgment as well as anger. The monarchy survived because the family finally drew a boundary and honored it. Diana's ring returned to its untouched place, Camilla accepted the limit of her authority, and William emerged not only as a grieving son, but as a future king capable of turning personal pain into lasting protection. The ballroom eventually reopened, the orchestra returned, and the palace resumed its ceremonies. But Diana's ring remained sealed away, exactly where her wishes, her sons, and the final judgment of the family had placed it. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.